Alrighty. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fred Ortiz, and welcome to my Revit, Creating a Custom Revit Family with Annotation Lunch and Learn. I also have Terry Anderick with me. He's your AEC account manager. Hey, Terry. How you doing?
Hey there, Fred. Thanks for the introduction. I'm here and happy.
I didn't forget you this time, Terry. We're good. But anyways, attendees, today's Lunch and Learn will be the fourth of six in a series of Lunch and Learns that I will be presenting throughout the remainder of the year, so please keep an eye out for my future email invitations. For those of you who have attended any of my previous Lunch and Learns, thanks again for keeping me employed and spending your lunch hours with me, of course. And for those of you who are new to my Lunch and Learn series, I'm glad that you have finally decided to join us. Welcome. As I mentioned in my previous Lunch and Learns, this series was specifically set up for you guys, our customers, to continue to educate you guys and your company with efficient ways of doing things when it comes to your CAD BIM software. Ketiv is a resource that you guys have, a resource that we want you to utilize for your software and training needs. As far as our agenda, I will begin today's Lunch and Learn by talking about the benefits of creating custom Revit families, which applies to both the AEC and manufacturing industries. I will then be showing you how to successfully create a custom lighting fixture family with a connector and some materials assigned to it. I will also be showing you how to create an annotation symbol family and how to add that annotation symbol family to the custom lighting fixture family. That was a tongue twister right there. For those of you new to my Lunch and Learn series, let me give you a brief introduction of my industry background before I joined the Ketiv team. So for myself, I have about over 20 years of industry experience, such as working for a large mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineering firm where I worked on numerous AutoCAD, Revit, and MicroStation electrical projects, ranging from California universities, state and community colleges, and multiple port and government facility projects. I also worked for a manufacturing company back in the day as a CNC machinist, a machine assembler, and a drafter. And after I started drafting on a board with paper and pencil, I moved on to eventually learning AutoCAD on Release 13, which was back in the mid-90s, or the 1900s, as my kids like to call it. All right. All right. So before we jump into my live session, let's talk a little bit about what a Revit family is for those of you who are not familiar with Revit families. And then we'll talk about the benefits of creating custom Revit families. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the Revit family, a Revit family is pretty much all of the elements that you add to your Revit projects. For example, the walls, windows, doors, plumbing fixtures, lighting fixtures, and mechanical equipment that you may use to assemble a building model, as well as callouts, tags, and detail components that you use to document your model. And by using predefined families and creating new families in Revit, you could add both standard and custom elements to your building models. Families also provide a level of control over elements that are similar in use and behavior, which allows you to easily make design changes and manage your projects more efficiently. So jumping right into the AEC industry, the benefits of creating custom Revit families. First off, the key benefit when creating your own custom Revit family is the fact that you will be in control of the way your families look, how they behave in a Revit project, and what parameters they possess. And doing that is a really good process. So versus downloading a vendor's family or a family off of Autodesk Seek, you never quite know what you're getting until you actually insert the family into a Revit project, which is a pretty scary process. But nowadays with Autodesk Seek, there is a lot of mandated content up there, so you might be safe getting some stuff off there, but I still recommend creating your own. Like I said, don't get me wrong, some third-party options do work fine, just such as Autodesk Seek, but you really want to be in control of what you're creating and what I like to call good content. And without good content, working on a Revit project could be a little frustrating for an end user. And believe me, I was that frustrated end user when I first started using Revit back in 2008. They were very limited on content. For what I worked on, the electrical side, they were very limited, and it was very frustrating trying to deal with some families that were created in my office. And I'm pretty sure right now that there are still some frustrated end users out there right about now, in 2015, and that's like 7 years ago. We were barely beginning that process, and we had a lot of issues, and I'm sure they're still around now. All right, so let's jump into manufacturing industry. So with the emergence of Revit as the standard BIM modeling tool, manufacturing firms are now being asked to provide BIM compliant data utilizing Revit. So if you're manufacturing a product and you want to get your product specified into a Revit building project, you definitely want to create your own Revit families. The ecosystem that Autodesk has created between mechanical and AEC design allows building product manufacturers the ability to better partner with their construction customers as well. So if a manufacturer has his product readily available in an RFA file format, they are able to respond faster to their sales opportunities and get specified earlier in the building construction process, which is very important if you want to sell your products and maintain a good relationship with the contractor. And what it also does, it strengthens, like I said, it strengthens the manufacturing company's relationships with architects, engineers, contractors, and building slash facility owners, and it improves your chances of making more sales of your product down the road. All right, so as far as our live session, it's about that time to get started. So, excuse me, if you guys have any questions during my session, I'll answer them at the conclusion of my Lunch and Learn. But before we begin, let's talk a little bit about my experience using Revit Families back in 2008. Like I said, there was a lack of good content back in 2008 for my discipline, electrical. There was some good content for mechanical and some for plumbing, but back when I started using Revit, there was a lack of good content. And some of the families that were created in my office weren't created on the correct template, so that's another important thing, is selecting the correct template. The category, the hosting behavior is all important, so you want to make sure you lock that down before you begin creating a family. Hosting behavior cannot be changed later on down the road, so you want to pick the correct family template to start off, such as like a wall-based or ceiling-based family. If you're going to be hosting your Revit family to the wall, you want to make it a wall-based family. And nowadays, most multidiscipline firms use a face-based or work plane-based approach to creating families, which keeps the family a little bit more flexible. All right, so let's jump into the live session. So let me open up my Revit really quick. All right, just give me a second. So in today's live Lunch and Learn session, I will be showing you how to create a custom lighting fixture family while modifying the light source to display a photometric web. And what a photometric web is, it describes the geometry of how the light comes out of the actual light fixture. So we'll be doing that, and then after we specify the photometric web, we'll specify an actual IES file. And an IES file is a text file usually provided by a lighting manufacturer that describes the intensity of a light source. So we're going to be specifying an IES file. We're going to then apply a connector to the family and assign some materials to the lighting fixture elements. After we do that, I will then create an annotation family and then add the annotation family to the custom lighting fixture family. And last but not least, I will test out the custom family in a Revit project and see how that works see how it works within a Revit project. All right, so before beginning to create a custom family on your end, I really recommend you guys plan ahead by asking yourself questions about a variety of questions, including, is this family going to be used only in one project, which would be an in-place family, or is this family going to be used in multiple projects, which would be a component family? You also want to ask yourself if your family is going to need multiple 2D views, 3D elements, or maybe both. You also want to ask yourself, is the family going to be a host-based, like I talked about, or a standalone family, something like a chair or a table you just insert into your model, it's not necessarily hosted to anything. And you want to make sure your family is going to have, if it's going to have various sizes or just one size. So for this live session, I'm going to create a family, a component family that would most likely be used in multiple projects. And I'm going to have a 2D view and some 3D elements, so I'm going to have both elements. And my family is going to be a host-based family because I want my light fixture to attach to a ceiling. And I'm only going to have one size for this light fixture in this live session. All right, so most important thing when creating custom family is selecting the correct template. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to create a new family based on a lighting fixture ceiling based template. So on my Revit homepage, I'm going to go to my families and I'm going to select new right here. And in my select template file dialog box, I'm going to browse for my lighting fixture ceiling base. You see we have a ceiling based, wall based, and a no based option. I'm going to select the ceiling based template and I'm going to open that guy. So right now, before I get started, I'm going to actually save my file. So I'm going to save it right here, and I'm going to call it pendant light. That sounds about right. Pendant light, and I'm going to say save. And now what I'm going to do is go down on my project browser down here on the left, and I'm going to select my elevation. I want to see my front view. Let me do a zoom extents to bring that up. All right, so right now I'm in my front view elevation, and what we have already set up for us, we have some reference planes. So up here we got our ceiling reference plane. We have our light source elevation reference plane. This yellow round circle right here, that's my actual light source definition. Down here I have my reference level, so if I click on that, it's a reference level. And in the middle I have another reference plane called the light source axis. All right, so before we begin modeling our family, I'm going to change some settings. So what I'm going to do right now is modify the light source. So I'm going to go over here and select the light source, and I'm going to go up to my Modify Light Source contextual tab up here and select Light Source Definition. So what this does is brings up my light source definition dialog box. So what I want to do right here is I want to change my light distribution from a standard spherical to a photometric web, just like that. So I'm going to apply that and say OK. So now you notice my light source kind of changed in shape. All right, so what I want to do now is in my light source definition dialog box, I want to go up to the top up here and select my family types. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to change some values for my family. So I'm going to go browse down to my lamp right here, and I'm going to change my lamp. I'm going to give it a name of CF, which means compact fluorescent. I'm going to give it a wattage of 42, and I'm going to add TRT, which is a triple tube compact fluorescent light bulb. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go down to my apparent load, which is down here. I'm going to give my apparent load of 44.21 volt amp. Oops, bring that back, volt amps. And then I'm going to go down to my tilt angle for my light, and I'm going to change that from 60 degrees to 90. So it'll come straight down from the light fixture. All right, so down here, if you see it under my photometrics, I have a photometric web file. So I'm going to go over here and click on that. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually specify an exact IES file from a manufacturer. So right now I'm going to use this IES file called Spot Ideal. So I'm going to open up that. So now my photometric web is referencing that IES file. And like I said, an IES file is a text file provided by a lighting manufacturer that describes the intensity of a light source. So what it does is it gives you a better visual effects when you're rendering your image down the road. Okay. So now I'm going to change a couple of more settings. I'm going to go into my light loss factor, and I'm going to change that a little bit just to kind of go through some steps here. I'm going to make that 0.85 and say OK. And I'm going to change my initial intensity from 1800 to 3200. I'm just kind of getting you familiar with the steps of changing your information in your family types. I'm going to leave my initial color to 300K, and I'm going to say apply. OK. And now what I want to do is just save my family really quick, so I'm going to save it. And now if you notice, my light source has changed to a photometric web, which is what we're trying to accomplish. All right, so next step now, after we modified the light source and specified the IS file, I'm going to create some type parameters. So in the family types dialog box, which is up here, family types, I'm going to go down to the left over here and say create a new parameter. So that'll bring up my parameters properties dialog box. And I want to create a pendant material parameters. So it's going to be a type parameter, family parameter, and I'm going to call it pendant material, just like that. I'm going to leave the discipline common, and for my type parameter, I'm going to select material, and I'm going to group it under material and finishes, and I'm going to say OK. So now under material and finishes, I have my pendant material, and now I'm going to go ahead and add another type parameter, and this one I'm going to call glass material. Just like that, I'm going to keep it a type parameter. Discipline's common. I'm going to change my type parameter to material and leave it grouped under materials and finish, just like that. All right, so I'm going to apply this and say OK. And now what I want to do is actually create my parametric framework, which is creating my light fixture itself. So I'm going to zoom into my reference grids, but before I do that, I'm going to turn off my light source so it doesn't get in my way of my my design. So I'm going to go over here on my properties, and I'm going to turn light source off, just like that. And now I'm going to start adding some reference planes. So I'm going to go to my Create tab over here and add some reference planes, which are right here. So I'm going to add a reference plane just by clicking on this and going down to my other reference planes. I actually want my light fixture to be 6 inches wide. So I'm going to go over here and draw a reference plane. You see, about 3 inches off that way. Just bring it down. Now I'm going to draw another reference plane on the other side, about the same distance, 3 inches, just like that. All right, so now I want to draw another reference plane to give me the length of my actual glass material. So right here I'm going to have my pendant in between these reference planes, and then I want to have my light fixture glass element down here. So I'm going to create one more reference plane to accomplish that. So reference plane. This one I want to make at least 7.5. So I'm going to go right there, 7.5, and drag out my reference plane this way. I'm going to select that reference plane and drag it over this way. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some dimensions to make sure I got this correct. So I want this to be 6 inches. So I'm going to add a dimension up here. All right, I got the 6 inches. I'm going to add another dimension over here from my ceiling to my lamp. So I want to dimension that. I want this to be 4 inches. So I got the 4 inches right there. And I'm going to add one more dimension from this reference plane to the bottom of my lamp. And that one's going to be 7.5 inches. So now I know my reference planes are laid out correctly. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to draw the profile for my pendant light. So what I'm going to do is go back to my Create tab up on the top left, and I'm going to choose the Revolve tool, which is this guy right here. So I'm going to select Revolve, and this opens up my Modify Create Revolve ribbon. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to concentrate on a boundary line. So I want to create a boundary line for my pendant. So I'm going to make sure that's checked, and I'm going to start drawing a profile of my boundary line. So I'm going to select the line command. I'm going to zoom in and grab right from that point. And I'm going to go to the right a little bit. Let me make that about 1/8. So I'm going to type in 0 space 1/8 to get that. So now I got that. So now I'm going to come down a little bit, maybe about 3/4 of an inch. Then I'm going to come out this way a little bit to give it a little bit of an angle. I'm going to go down about, let me see. Let me try to grab a 60-degree angle. I'm going to go down about 1 inch, just right there. Now I'm going to come straight down again. This time I'm going to go about maybe 2 inches or 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches looks good, so I'm going to go right about there. I'm going to drop that point, and now I'm going to give myself another angle for the top of my pendant light. So I'm going to try to maintain that 60-degree angle and come all the way down here, just like that. So now what I want to do is give it some width to my profile. So I'm going to do it again, go 0 space 1/8 to give it a width. So now I have sort of my profile set up. So what I want to do now, instead of just drawing it and eyeballing it, I'm going to actually do an offset. So I'm going to do an offset of 0 1/8, just right here. And I'm going to offset this guy, just like that, like that. So if you notice right now, it's not a closed loop profile, so I got to come down here and create a fillet. Or I could just drag this guy over and just like that. Probably be simpler. I'm just going to drag it over and connect them. So now right now is what I have is a closed loop profile. So now what I got to do is I got to go back up to my Modify Create Revolve tab and select an axis line. So I'm going to draw an axis line, just arbitrary point up here, just down here. So now I have an axis line to rotate my closed loop profile. So once I check this green check, I have my profile. Let me change this to wireframe really quick. Okay, so that's the first part of my pendant light. I have my actual pendant that's connected to the ceiling. And now what I want to do now is I want to draw my actual glass light fixture. So let's go back up to our Create tab and perform the same kind of steps, but this time we're going to create a light fixture, which should be made out of glass. So let's do the Revolve command again. So I'm going to go to my Revolve command, make sure my boundary line's checked, and I'm going to zoom right into my, right there. So I'm going to start right there, and I'm going to draw a line out to the endpoint. And now I'm going to change my line to a spline so I can get a nice round feel for my light fixture. So I'm going to go out here and create an angle, kind of like that. And I'm going to keep going down all the way till I hit this bottom corner because I want to maintain my 7.5 inches. So let's go right about there, and then I'm going to finish it off right there. Now I want to go back up to my line and make a straight line from here. So I'm going to make a straight line this way, same distance, 0 space 1/8, just like that. And I want to come back up here and make another line from that endpoint, go down 0 space 1/8. And like I did for the pendant, I'm going to do the same thing for the glass light fixture. I'm going to actually do an offset. And if you notice, my settings are already there, so I'm going to leave it at 1/8. So I'm going to go over here and offset this guy, offset that guy, and now I have my profile. It looks like it's already closed, but let me just double check to make sure it's a closed loop. Yeah, it looks closed. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go up to my Create tab again and select my axis line and just pick a couple of points on this axis line so I can revolve my solid profile. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the green check mark again to revolve around that axis. And now I have my lamp. So I have my pendant and my lamp created. And let me turn my light source back on. So now you can see I have my light source there, and for some reason it went back to, there we go. Let me fix that. Okay, for some reason my light source changed back to the original, but we'll fix that in a bit. So let's go over here to family type. Light source, let's bring back that spot. I don't know why I did that, it's just a glitch or something. Let me bring back that spot, IS. And let me change that angle back to 90. For some reason it didn't save, sorry about that. All right, so there we go. So let me turn that light source off. Actually, I'll just leave it on. So what you see right now is my light source, photometric web, and I do have my pendant in there with my actual my glass light fixture. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to add a connector to this. So I'm going to switch over to my actually, you know what? Before we do that, let's assign some materials. So I'm going to turn my light source back off. Actually, let me save this before I do that and turn my light source back off. And let me go over here to this guy, and I want to assign some material to that. Before I do, let me open up another file I have that already has some materials inside of it. So I want to transfer those project standards over to this guy. So my materials are already there. So let me go to my data sets, materials, and open up this materials guy right here. Okay. Let me go back to my lamp. So I want to do is manage. I want to transfer project standards. So I just want to uncheck all these guys, check none, and I just want to bring my materials over and say OK. So what I just did is I transferred some project standards from an old fixture to this one so I could grab the same materials. So let me go back over there and close this guy down. All right, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to assign the materials. So I'm going to select my pendant revolve, which is this guy up here. I'm going to select my pendant revolve, and in my properties panel, in the materials, I'm going to go over here to this guy, and I'm going to change my material to, let me see what we got, metal brass, and say OK. And I'm going to associate that parameter right here. So I'm going to associate it to my pendant material, which is that type parameter I created. So I'm going to associate those guys together. So that one's complete. And now I'm going to click on my glass and do the same thing. I'm going to change the material for my glass to, let me see, let's go glass green and say OK. And then let me associate the parameter to glass material and say OK. So now if I go down here and make it realistic, you can see I have some kind of, actually you can't right now. But anyways, I have some materials associated to that, so down the road we'll see that they actually have some kind of color. Let me just double check. Yeah, we're good. Okay. All right, so now that we have our Revit family created and we assign some materials to it, now we're going to go ahead and add that connector to it. So what we're going to do is switch to our 3D view. Pan around and let me bring on my light source in this guy. So I'm going to turn my light source on. Apply. For some reason, I don't know what's going on, but for some reason it keeps reverting back to that. So let me fix that again. Sorry about that. Must not like my settings. There we go. So we have my light fixture with the photometric web, and let me change this to a wireframe so we get a little bit of a look at it. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to add a connector to the top of my light, so then down the road when we actually insert this into a Revit project, we want to be able to connect some kind of power system to it. So what I'm going to do is after I open up my 3D view, I'm going to go into the Create tab, and I'm going to select Electrical Connector, this guy right here. I'm going to go down on my options bar and make sure it's power balanced. Okay, we got that. And now I want to attach the connector right onto the top of my, just like that. I just attach my connector to the top of the pendant. So now I actually have a connection point for my light fixture to give it power down the road. So let me go up here and select Modify and get out of that. Let me select my connector one more time. So now that I select my connector, I want to go over to my Properties palette. And I want to change some of these parameters. So I'm going to go to my, let me see what we want to change. So for voltage, I'm going to go 277. For my apparent load, I want to match my family. So I think it was 44.21. And for my power factor, I want to make that 0.95. Oops. 0.95. Just like that. And for my load classification, I want to select over here, oops, wrong one. For this one, I want to select lighting. So I'm going to go over here and select lighting because it's a lighting fixture. So now I have my load classification changed to lighting. I have my voltage to, should be 277. Parent load, 44.21. Power factor, 0.95. And I just want to verify that it is power balanced. All right, so let's apply that. And go back over here and let's double check to make sure those stayed. Okay, we got those. Those are good. So let's save our family one more time. All right, so now we have this light fixture created. I could zoom around here. We have a ceiling-based light fixture with the photometric web attached to it. That'll give you better rendering at the end if you have to render your images out for presentation purposes. So I'm going to save this guy, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump in to create an annotation symbol. So what I got to do now is go to my Revit application menu on the top left, and I want to select New. And for New, I want to select Family. For this one, I want to go into my Annotations folder, and I want to select the generic annotation Where'd it go? There we go. I want to select generic. Where'd it go? Give me a second. Let me find this template. Believe me or not, it was just here a while ago when I was going over this stuff. So, general annotation. All right, let me cancel this really quick. Let me try this again. So I'm going to do a new family. English annotations. There it goes right there. So there's my generic annotation. So I want to select that. So after I have my initial template selected, which is important, I want to zoom in right here and check out what's going on in this file. So if I look over here as a note that says change family category to set appropriate annotation type, I don't want to change anything in here because I want this to maintain the generic annotation family type. So I'm going to delete this note. I don't need that. I'm going to delete the note. And I'm going to actually save my family now. I'm going to save it. I'm going to call it pendant light annotation. Just like that. And I'm going to save it. And now what I want to do is I want to draw my sketch of my label. So I'm going to go over to my Create tab, kind of zoom in right here a little bit. I'm going to go to Create, and I'm going to pick my line command. I'm going to draw a line right from the intersection. And let me make this about, let me go about 0.1/8, just like that. Let me stretch this out a bit to get it to make it a 1/4 inch. There you go. So I have that one set. So I have my 1/4 inch annotation line. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to offset this guy. So I'm going to go over and offset him about, I'll leave it at 1/8. So I'm going to offset this guy at 1/8 up, just like that. I'm going to go back to my Create tab and create a reference line. So now I'm going to create a reference line just to help me out with my symbol. So I'm going to create a reference line just like this. And one more reference line coming out this way. All right, so now I want to go back to my Create, select the line, pick right here, and I want to kind of get let me go for like a 60-degree angle right there, and I'm going to click it, then I'm going to go finish it up there. So now what I want to do is go back and just delete my reference lines. And now I want to perform the mirror command, so I want to do a mirror command, and select these guys. Right off this angle. So now I have an annotation label similar to like a callout, is what I like to call it. So now we have a label callout created. So once we have this created, now we got to create another parameter, but this time we're going to create an instance parameter. So in the Create tab over here, on the text panel, I want to select this label icon. So I'm going to select label. And I'm going to go click somewhere, just arbitrary point inside my symbol. I'm going to click that. And this brings up my Edit Label dialog box. So in my Edit Label dialog box, I want to go down to the bottom right here and create or add a parameter. So I'm going to add a parameter. So this time instead of type, I want to have it an instance parameter. And I want to name it, let me see, we're going to name this guy, label. For the discipline, we'll leave it common. For type parameter, we're going to give it a text type parameter. And we're going to group it under identity data, this guy. So we have a parameter type instance named label, discipline's common, type is text, and identity data. So we're going to say OK. So now I have a new parameter created right there. So now what I want to do is add this parameter to my label parameters. So I'm going to click on him and select this button right here to add to my parameter. So now I have this actual label parameter set. And what I want to do is I want to give it a a value, and I'm going to just arbitrarily call it C1 for the fixture type. And I'm going to click Apply, OK. So now what I want to do is I want to select a new label and just like this, just click on it. Just kind of drag these guys in. We don't need them too far. So I'm going to click on this guy. And over here on my left, on my properties, I'm going to select Edit Type. And I want my background to be transparent. So when it does insert on a drawing, the background's transparent so it shows up nice. So I'm going to say OK. Oops. And over here, I want to make sure my other parameters are set. So I want to, oops, there we go. So with nothing selected, I want to select these parameters over here. So I want to rotate this with the component, and I want to keep the text readable. So if I have to rotate my component on a Revit plan or a building plan, I want my text to be readable. So there we go. We want that. And now that we have all those set, let me just kind of move my text to kind of center up in my label so it looks a lot better. Okay, that looks good. So now what I want to do is save my family. And now I want to load it into my other project, so let me make sure my project's opened. All right, so I got this project open, which is my light fixture, my pendant light. I want to switch this guy to reference level. And let me go back to my annotation symbol, and I want to load this back into my project. So what I'm going to do is go up here to my Modify tab. Select Load into Project, and there's my symbol. So right now what I want to do now is, since it's loaded in, I want to place it on the floor plan reference level, so when I do insert it on the floor plan, it's readable. And I don't necessarily want it on top of my fixture. Let's place it up here on top, just like that. All right, so now I have this family type inserted into my custom family. So now what we have to do now is create some more parameters. So I'm going to go over to the Family Types dialog box right here. And I'm going to create an instance parameter. So I'm going to go down here, create another parameter. It's going to be an instance parameter. I'm going to label this one the same, label. It's going to be a label. The type parameter, keep it at common. Type's going to be text once again. And it's going to be grouped under identity data. Just like that. So I have a family parameter instance named label. I'm going to select OK. So down here on my identity data now I have this label. So what I want to do is I want to give it a value. So I'm going to give it a value of C1, like we did before, C1. Select Apply and close. So now you notice there's no C1 there. It's because they're not linked. So what I have to do now is I have to actually link the parameter in the lighting fixture to the one in the label. So let's go through that process right now. So I'm going to select the instance of my annotation label just like that by clicking on it. And I'm going to go up to my properties panel up on the top left. And for my label, I'm going to go over here and associate family parameter to the label inside this custom family, just like that. So I'm associating that. So now you see it has the C1 populated, which is good. All right, so now I have those two objects linked and ready to go. So my next step would be to save this family. Make sure we got it all set properly. Looks good. We got our light fixture from a floor plan view, and we have our annotation label right on top. So I'm going to save this guy. All right. All looks good. So now I'm going to save them all. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to test this family out to see if it actually works in a Revit project. So I'm going to go over here and open up a project I have saved, an architectural project. So I'm going to go and open this guy up. I'm going to detach it and preserve work sets. So once this project pops up, I'm going to go to the ceiling plan and try to insert the family we just created into this model. So here we go. So I'm going to go to my insert. I'm going to load a family. Before I do that though, let me just make sure these are all saved. Okay, looks like we're all saved. So let me go back to my building project. So now I'm going to go ahead and load that pendant family in that has the custom annotation embedded inside of it. So I'm going to browse to that data set. I'm going to find my pendant light, which is this guy, and I'm going to open it up, load it in. So now that pendant light is loaded into my family, and I want to go over here to my Systems tab and select Light Fixture. And if you see, my pendant light is right here ready to go, so I'm going to click on that, bring it in, drop it right there on my ceiling grid. So this looks like a pendant light I want to hang from my ceiling, so I'm going to place it right there. And it looks good to go. So if I click on it one more time, you'll see it has a connector to connect to for your electrical system, and it has an actual label associated to it. All right, so let me just save this. And now we have our custom Revit light family with an annotation symbol embedded that you can now place on your drawing. You could grab it, you could make a copy of it, bring it over to the right, place it here. You could actually go in there and edit the label. Maybe this one is C2. So now you have two different designations for the same light fixture. Maybe it's a different light fixture, maybe it's the same, maybe it has some kind of different kind of specs to it. So there you go. You have a custom light fixture family with an embedded annotation symbol family. All right, so let me jump into back into my PowerPoint. And let's talk about a summary of what we just saw. So a summary of what we just saw right now is we talked a little bit about the benefits of custom Revit families. We talked about the benefits of creating your own custom Revit families in the AEC and manufacturing industry. For the AEC industry, you have a lot of control when you create your own custom families. You have control over the appearance, like I said, the behavior and the parameters. You don't have to rely on a third-party source. And if you're doing all the work yourself and you do it very, very well, you're actually creating good content to use for yourself and for other designers. And creating custom families on your own kind of ends the frustration of dealing with third-party content that doesn't work correctly. And as far as the manufacturing industry, with a custom Revit family, you can respond quickly to customer needs, which will increase your sales. And you can now actually provide data in formats often mandated by the AEC industry, such as a Revit family, which is highly mandated. For manufacturing as well, you can allow your products to become specified earlier in a building project. You can increase the strength of your relationships with the architects and engineers, etc. We also talked about how to create a custom Revit family. So we talked about selecting the correct family template, which is very important. Creating the parametric framework, which is another important step. And we talked about adding a connector and assigning materials to the actual Revit family. We then went over how to create an annotation family, which is like a label or a tag. So we went over selecting the correct family template for that, which is important. We drew the sketch just by hand, just a hand-drawn sketch of the 2D label, and we created a couple instance parameters. We then went over how to insert an annotation family into a custom family. So we had to create some more instance parameters and then link those parameters to get them to work correctly, and then we actually tested the family, and it worked. All right, so for Q&A, if you have any questions, please type them into the GoToMeeting question Q&A panel, and I will answer them as they come in. And I do have a couple questions already coming in right now. So one of them is, I think I went over this, but this question is, what is an IES file and what does it do? So I think I said an IES file is an actual text file provided by a lighting manufacturer that describes the intensity of a light source at points on a spherical grid, so which was that photometric web. And it also describes the geometry of how the light actually comes out of the light fixture. and that photometric web. An IES file also provides a more photorealistic lighting effect when creating rendered images, which is pretty important. You want to have a good rendered image for presentation purposes or to sell your product. Okay, and I have another one. This is a tough one. What does IES stand for? I think IES stands for Illuminating Engineering Society. I think that's correct, right, Terry? IES?
That I don't know. I was going to guess
Okay.
Industrial Electrical Society, but that's just me.
Well, pretty close, but I think it does stand for Illuminating Engineering Society. I could be wrong, though, but I'll double check that.
Fred, I had a
Yes.
question that came through here.
Sure.
When is the best time? Let's talk about a project. You've won the contract. When's the best time to start building your Revit families and locking them down so that people aren't all over the place with what they're using as the design goes forward? Can you talk about that a second?
So you want to know when's the best time to start creating your own content, pretty much?
Correct. And,
So,
for a specific project. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a tough one because if you get a new project and right when you have to start working on a Revit project, I'm sure you're going to have deadlines and things like that. So you might want to plan ahead before you even lock a project down. But if you do have to go that route and you have a project coming up, you might want to build your own content, which is really good, which is what I recommend. But like I told you guys before in the Autodesk Seek, they have a lot of mandated Revit families readily available for you guys to use. And I played with those a little bit recently, and they're a lot better than they were before, and they work correctly, and they do the job. So if you're in a bind and you have to start a project and you're crunched for time, you can create some custom families right off the bat, or you could always go to Autodesk Seek, or last resort, ask a vendor. But I really recommend creating your own custom content. And if it has to be done, it has to be done. You just got to make time for it and get it done for that project. Any more questions?
One just came through, Fred.
Okay.
Is there any way to, managing the data and making sure that everyone's working with the same version of families and family files? What ways are there to do that? The data management side of that.
Data management, well, that could be done in-house, but what I'm seeing a lot lately, and you could probably attest to this, Terry, is a lot of AEC companies are now moving to using Vault as that main depository for your Revit family. And what it does is with Vault, if you have to make a change, you check out that Revit family, you make a change, and then you put it back. But it does create a history of your old families. So I'm seeing a lot of that happening a lot more now in the AEC industry using Vault for that purpose.
Thanks.
And I got one more question. What was the difference between a host-based family and a standalone family? I think I talked about that as well, but just to reiterate, a host-based family is pretty much dependent on a host, such as a wall, ceiling, floor, a roof, or a face. Kind of like the light fixture we just created, that was a ceiling hosted family. And a standalone family doesn't necessarily need a host, and those things are pretty much like a chair or a table or some type of mechanical equipment you place inside of a building. It doesn't necessarily need a host to be inserted. So that's pretty much the difference right there. All right, so let's move on to our wrap-up. So as far as a wrap-up, before I let you all go, here's a quick wrap-up of today's Lunch and Learn. So what I will be doing is I'll be sending out a follow-up PDF on today's topic via email sometime next week, so keep an eye out for that, guys. My next Lunch and Learn will be taking place on Wednesday, December 2nd at the same time, which is noon. And for that topic, we will be talking about what's new in Revit 2016 Release 2, which is already available now for customers on subscription. And just to tie that in with what we did today, there is a cool new feature on that when you're creating families. So when you're actually creating a family and trying to come up with an idea, there's an actual family element visibility setting that allows you to preview your design intent before you actually save it and create it. It gives you like a preview of what you're working on. So that's a pretty cool feature we'll be going over in that Lunch and Learn. So hopefully you guys can attend. And as far as upcoming training classes, I have an AutoCAD 2016 Fundamentals class taking place next Monday, November 23rd through the 25th. and I still have a couple of spots to fill on that one, so if you guys are interested, just let me know. And I also have a Revit Architecture 2016 Fundamentals class taking place December 21st through the 23rd. So if you're interested in attending any of my training classes, please visit our website to sign up, or feel free to contact me directly. So once again, that concludes our Revit Creating a Custom Family Lunch and Learn, and thanks again for attending my Lunch and Learn, and have a great rest of your day. I appreciate your time.